Hi, I'm Dana. I work at the Manteca Library, and I'm going to be taking you through the steps of our cake making today. So the first thing you're going to want to do is go ahead and head over to your oven. You're going to preheat that for 350 degrees. Okay, so once you've got that done, we're going to go ahead and prepare the pan. The beautiful thing about a recipe like this is you really can use whatever pan you want. Today I'm going to go ahead and use two 8-inch round cake pans. So you want to prep this pan because you don't want your cake to get all stuck in it. What I've got is some shortening that I'm going to just go ahead and rub around the bottom and the edges of the pan. So what the shortening is going to do is to provide a layer on your cake pan to keep the cake from getting stuck once you bake it. So we're just going to go ahead and put that. Remember, make sure you get it all over both the bottom and the sides. No good if you get your cake unstuck on the bottom, but it's still stuck on the sides. Although it is a little easier to get it off once it's stuck on the side. Okay, so I've got my shortening all around, so I'm going to go ahead and put that down. And then another suggestion is to go ahead and put in just a little bit of flour. So once we're finished with this, we're going to just set the pan aside and move on to the next step. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and grab this bowl with flour. So we've got 2 cups of all-purpose flour. We're going to take our salt, which is 1/4 of table salt. We've got teaspoons of baking powder, so we're going to dump that in. And then just go ahead and grab a spoon and mix it up a little bit. You just want to make sure it gets mixed in a little bit so it's not all sitting right at the top. Other than that, it's not too big of a deal. And I'm going to set that aside and let that be. Okay, so the first thing we're going to go ahead and mix is going to be our butter and our sugar. So the recipe calls for 3/4 of a cup of butter. You're going to want to make sure that's softened so that you get the right consistency when you're mixing it. So we can just dump that straight in here into our bowl. Make sure it all comes out. I got one stuck in there. And then we're going to go ahead and grab our sugar. So our sugar is 1.5 cups of just granulated sugar. We're going to go ahead and dump that in there as well. And that is the beginning of our mixing. So this is something we need to go ahead and beat. I'm using my KitchenAid today. You can use a hand mixer, you can use something like this or Cuisinart, whatever you've got available. This is going to be beat on somewhat of a low speed, so I'm going to go to up to about 4 on mine. So what you're looking for is for your sugar and your butter to come out kind of fluffy. I don't know how well you can see that, but go ahead and take a look. So that's what you're going for. Remember to go ahead and scrape the sides once or twice while you're mixing, just to make sure nothing gets stuck. So our next ingredients are going to be the eggs. We have 3 eggs, and we're just going to go ahead and add them one at a time. We're going to beat them in just until they're mixed, and then we're going to stop and put in the next one. Okay, once you've got your 3 eggs mixed in, you're going to add 2 teaspoons of vanilla. Go ahead and mix that a little. And then it's going to be time to add our dry ingredients. So that, remember, is the flour, the baking powder, and the salt that we mixed earlier. I'm going to go ahead and put this on so it makes it a little bit easier for me to add. So we're going to go ahead and divide this. We're going to try and do about 1/3 of our dry ingredients at a time. After you put in 1/3 of that, you're going to put in 1/3 of your milk. We have 3/4 of a cup of milk, so you're going to put in 1/4 of a cup every time. All right, let's get going. Okay, so the last thing we're going to add, we have right here our sour cream. So we have 1/2 cup of sour cream, and that's going to be the last thing to go into our mixture here. Here is our batter. This is what mine looks like. Hopefully what yours looks like as well. We're going to go ahead and grab that pan. Now this recipe is enough to make 2 cakes this size. So I'm only going to put about half the batter into this cake pan. I like to move it around a little bit, make sure that it's all even. One important thing is you want to make sure that you tap your cake a couple times just to get out any air bubbles that may be stuck in there. Looks looks like we can probably put a little bit more batter in here without shorting the next cake. Okay. So we're gonna leave it at that. Move that around a little bit, and again with the tap. And our cake's ready to go in. So the recipe says 30 to 35 minutes. We have noticed in trying out this recipe, it's usually closer to 40. So I would suggest you set your timer for 35 minutes and then keep an eye on it from there. You'll know it's ready when a toothpick or a knife stuck into the middle comes out clean. So once your cake comes out, you're gonna go ahead and let it sit for about 10 minutes. At the end of that 10 minutes, you're gonna need to grab a knife. So I've got my knife right here, and my cake's actually been sitting out already. So what you're gonna go ahead and do is you're gonna grab this knife and you're just gonna stick it in and go all the way around the edge. Okay, so we're gonna set that knife aside, and then you're gonna need to get a cooling rack. So I just got some little ones over here. You're gonna take your cooling rack and put it upside down on your cake pan. You're gonna hold it just like this, and you're gonna flip it. And if all goes well and we made our cake pans full of that shortening and flour that's gonna help release the cake, when we lift this up, the cake comes out just perfectly. So then you're gonna go ahead and flip that cake very carefully so you don't damage it. It's still pretty warm at this point. You're gonna let it sit for at least an hour before you move on to the next step. So I'm gonna grab this cake and I'm gonna pass it to Juliann for the next part.
Thank you, Dana, for the cakes. And while those are cooling, we are going to make our frosting. So it's a chocolate buttercream frosting. So it's gonna have a lot of butter and a lot of powdered sugar. For those of you that don't know me, I am Juliann. I'm the children's librarian at the Tracy Branch Library. So you're going to need 1.5 cups of butter. I'm just gonna dump those in there. So like before, you want your butter to be room temperature. It'll mix better. If it's not room temperature, it's not gonna mix very well. So make sure you've had all this butter sitting out for a little while. And here is 2 cups powdered sugar. I'm gonna pour 1 more cup, but I'm not gonna mix it in right away because it can get kind of messy. The sugar will fly everywhere. We're gonna start it mixing. Nice and slow. You don't want that powdered sugar to go flying everywhere on you. Probably going to want a spatula of some sort, a spoon on hand, because you'll need to scrape it off in some places. I'm going to stop it for a bit so I can get those bottom parts kind of mixed in a little more, right? Some butter that goes clingy up here at the top, making more of a mess. You can see it's getting really creamy. You don't want chunks of butter in it. So that's why the softer your butter is, the easier this will be for you. You're going to want 1 tablespoon of vanilla. Make sure that it's like the real vanilla extract, not the artificial flavoring or anything like that. You want the real deal. So we're gonna get 1 tablespoon. This cup is so cool, it's got little measures. 1 tablespoon. And you're just gonna mix that in. You're going to mix your cocoa powder. And you want 3/4 cup of that. I don't know how well you can read that. You're going to mix that in too. You can see it's kind of getting all thick again. So to help it out, we're going to add 1 tablespoon of our 2 tablespoons of milk. You start with just the 1. just to see how it is, and then you add in the other one as kind of needed. I don't suggest pouring it into one of those little spoons right over the thing because I've done that and then I pour way too much milk in. So you mix that on in there and you just leave it to stir. It smells really good. It smells like cocoa and chocolate, like really nice and sweet, but not too sweet. So you can see the sides kind of don't, can you see? You can see on the sides it doesn't get quite as mixed as well. So you're gonna want to make sure that you kind of stop it at one point and scrape around again, just to make sure you've got everything. So I'm going to do that. My handy dandy spatula. I like to scrape down the sides and then along the bottom, kind of along this little top mixer part here and inside of it. A lot of it will get caught and not mix it. And then you'll have this weird little spot that's just like a chunk of non-chocolatey buttery buttercream instead of nice sweet chocolate buttercream. If you don't like chocolate, you don't have to add the cocoa, just add the vanilla and you'll get vanilla buttercream instead. Pretty simple. Put up just a little faster so it mixes a little better. And you're just going to keep going with this until you see it's pretty well mixed. You don't want to see any little white chunks or chunks of butter in there. You want it to be very smooth and spreadable, but you don't want it to be liquidy. So as you can see, it's very stiff. It doesn't go falling off. I'm going to add just a little more of the milk, not the full tablespoon. You just kind of gradually add more of it in as you go until it's nice and spreadable. You want it to spread, so. So the trick with buttercream is that it's basically just butter, powdered sugar, and milk, and then whatever flavor you want to add into it. So you can go as crazy as you want once you're comfortable with the recipe. So once it's done, it should be kind of like this. Really easy to stir, really well mixed, smooth, spreadable, very yummy. Gonna get messy. Don't lick your fingers when you're cooking. So now, it's been an hour. Remember, you gotta wait that hour. Your cakes should be cooled. Test them, make sure that they're a little cooler than hot. If your cakes are warm and you put your frosting on it, the frosting is gonna melt and soak into your cake, and then there's not really gonna be frosting to have. So that's why you let them cool the whole way. Unfortunately, one of my cakes, I didn't pick it up as carefully as I should have, and it split, but that's fine because you can use frosting as cement. We're gonna put this one on the top. So I'm just gonna set it here and wait. I like to use the spatula to spread it. You can use a knife, but the spatula is big and your cake's usually pretty decently big, so it spreads more space faster. So you wanna put it in the middle. Be as generous or stingy as you like. My mom doesn't like frosting, so she's pretty stingy with it. I am not my mom. So, thanks for joining me for the frosting. I'm gonna pass this cake off to Amanda for some decorating.
Cool, thank you, Juliann. Hi everyone, this is Amanda from the Mountains West Library, and now we're going to, Juliann? Juliann? Juliann, I think we forgot something. Alright, sorry about that, guys. It looks like we've lost our frosting somewhere in the transition. But you know what? That's okay, because now we have the opportunity to decorate our cake using the frosting that we made. Now, you may have seen when I received this that we have a Pikachu cake. However, I do not have yellow frosting for Pikachu. So instead what we're gonna do is we're gonna take this cake and we're gonna transform it into something new. And I'm feeling a little book inspired right now. Particularly, I'm being inspired by the book We're Going on a Bear Hunt. So I'm gonna turn Pikachu into a teddy bear cake. And in order to do this, I'm going to use a piping tool. Except you guys probably don't have just one of these lying around at home. If you do, props to you, but those who don't, I'm gonna teach you how to make one. Now you still will need some sort of piping tip. And then the other option you have is a plastic bag, a Ziploc bag. So what you're gonna do is the same general idea. Is you're gonna open it up and then you're gonna stick your little tip right in the corner. Now the trick is this time, you don't have a hole. So you're gonna have to make one. And for this case, you're gonna need scissors. Now, when you cut the hole, you wanna make sure that your hole is large enough so that when you go to make your design, the plastic bag isn't getting in the way. But at the same time, you don't wanna make the hole so big to like up here because you're gonna be applying pressure to the bag and you don't want your tip to pop out in the process. So I'm just gonna make a little hole. I'm just gonna do probably to about right there. I'm just gonna cut that tip off. And now, my tip goes through, and I have a bag ready for piping. We are now going to fill our bag with our chocolate frosting. As you can see, I don't have a lot here. This is definitely not all that Juliann showed you how to make. But in the case of a piping bag, a little goes a long way, and that little bit actually helps with control of your frosting. If you have too much in the bag, you risk the chance of, putting too much pressure on that hole and making this pop out. Or, it's just, a bigger bag is harder to control, so you may not get the design that you're hoping for. So, in this case, you're gonna flip the bag partially inside out, so it kind of has a little bit of a rim on it right there. All right, I'm not sure if you can see that rim or not. And that's just because if you get any of the frosting on the sides or anything like that, it's not gonna make a mess. It's still gonna be inside the bag. The next thing you're gonna need is a spatula. Now with the spatula, you're gonna go ahead and get a glob of this. And you want usually about half a cup to be in your bag. That's what's good for controlling the frosting. You're just gonna stick it right inside, and then what you do is you just kind of grip the sides of the spatula and you pull it out. So now most of the frosting is off the spatula and done. Now what I'm gonna do is, now that this is all sealed up and everything, and I'm just gonna make sure that my little pipe is in the slot at the time. As you can see, I changed it up, so now we have a different design for the next step. Now with your frosting, you're just gonna go ahead and you're just gonna kind of squeeze it down, kind of like you would with toothpaste. And then you're gonna slowly twist it so that you have a nice steady bag that is just right about there. All right, and now we can start decorating our stuff. But what you want to do first is you do want to use wax paper or something that you're willing to test on, just so that you can get a feel for what you're doing. So in this case, I have, that one didn't come out too great, so I'm gonna go, okay, let's try it again. And I have a leaf. Now that we have our piping tool, we can go ahead and get started with making Pikachu into a teddy bear. See you guys in a bit. And boom. Alrighty guys, now you guys have seen what I can do when inspired by a book. Now I want to see what you guys can do when you're inspired by a book. So in the comments below, I want you guys to make a cake and then show me a picture. How did you modify it? What book inspired you? I want to hear, I want to see, and I'm sure others want to see too. Hey, thank you so much for watching, and we will see you guys next time. Bye.